The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Veilmark expanse, and Commander Sumin Cho felt the weight of 200 lives pressing down on her shoulders as she stared into the absolute darkness that awaited them. "All ships, report status," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear that coiled in her chest. One by one, the captains of the volunteer fleet confirmed their readiness, and Sumin allowed herself a moment of pride at the courage of the people who had chosen to follow her into oblivion. General Taiho stood at her side on the bridge of the flagship, his weathered face set with grim determination. "The Hollow will sense our approach," he said quietly. "They will know what we are carrying, and they will do everything in their power to stop us." Sumin nodded and turned to address the crew. "We all know why we are here," she said. "We made a mistake that could have destroyed the galaxy, and now we have a chance to fix it. And I am proud to stand beside every single one of you in this moment." The fleet crossed the boundary into the Veilmark, and immediately the universe seemed to change around them. The stars that had glittered in the distance grew dim and cold, and the space between the ships seemed to thicken with a presence that pressed against their minds like fingers searching for a way inside. "Contact," Lieutenant Junho reported from his sensor station. Multiple signatures emerging from the debris field ahead, and "Commander." "They are using our own ships." Sumin's jaw tightened as she saw the vessels approaching on the tactical display. The Dauntless was leading the attack, its hull dark and its running lights pulsing with a sickly rhythm that seemed to match. No human power system. Behind it came dozens of other ships, vessels that must have been collected over millions of years from species that had ventured into the Veilmark and never returned. "The Hollow are wearing our technology like a disguise," Taiho observed. "They are trying to use our own weapons against us. Then we will have to hit them harder than they expect." Sumin replied, "All ships, combat formation, and do not let anything through to the flagship." The battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. The volunteer fleet fought with a ferocity born of desperation and sacrifice, knowing that every second they fought was another second closer to the heart of the Veilmark, where the dimensional wound waited to be sealed. Ships exploded in silent bursts of light as the Hollow overwhelmed their defenses and emptied their crews. But for every vessel that fell, the others pressed forward with even greater determination. General Taiho commanded the defensive screen with brilliant precision, sacrificing pieces of the fleet to protect the flagship and its precious cargo. And Sumin watched him work with a mixture of grief and admiration. "You know we are not going to survive this," she said quietly during a lull in the fighting. Taiho smiled, and there was peace in his expression that she had never seen before. "I spent my whole life trying to make humanity great," he replied. "But I never understood what greatness really meant until now. And if this is how I am remembered, then I can accept that." The fleet pushed deeper into the Veilmark, leaving a trail of wreckage and sacrifice. In their wake, 70 ships remained when they reached the outer ring of dead worlds. 40 ships remained when they passed through the graveyard of ancient civilizations. Only 12 ships remained when the heart of the dimensional wound finally came into view. It was not what Sumin had expected. The wound was a tear in the fabric of reality itself, a place where the normal rules of physics simply stopped applying. And through that tear, she could see something that her mind refused to fully comprehend. It was darkness, but it was also hunger and awareness and an intelligence so vast that it made humanity seem like insects crawling on the surface of an infinite ocean. The Hollow spoke through the emptied crew of the ships that surrounded the flagship, and their voices echoed through the communication channels in a chorus that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You have come so far," the Hollow said. "You have sacrificed so many of your kind to reach this place. And yet, you must know that your effort is meaningless." Sumin's hands trembled as she gripped the activation trigger that Dr. Kang had placed in her keeping. "Why do you do this?" the Hollow asked, and there was genuine curiosity in their stolen voices. "Every species that has faced us has fought, but none have ever returned to the wound after learning what we are. And none have ever willingly sacrificed themselves for a universe that did not ask for their protection." Suman looked at Taiho, at the crew of the flagship, at the tactical display showing the positions of the 11 other ships that had survived the journey. They were all waiting for her answer. "You want to know why we do this?" she said, and her voice carried across every channel to every surviving member of the fleet. "We do this because someone has to, and we do this because we made a mistake that endangered everyone. And we do this because being human means standing in front of the darkness, even when we know we cannot win." She activated the trigger, the device that Dr. Kang had built using the knowledge of the architects and the determination of humanity, came to life in the heart of the flagship. An energy beyond anything the universe had seen in 3 million years began to build toward critical mass. "You are sealing yourselves inside with us," the Hollow said. And for the first time, there was something like surprise in their voices. "You will be trapped between dimensions for eternity, never alive but never truly dead. Caught in the wound that you are creating." "We know," Suman replied, and she smiled as she spoke. "And we accept that price because the alternative is watching everyone we love become empty shells walking through cities they no longer understand." The dimensional collapse began. Reality twisted and folded in on itself around the heart of the Vomark. And the Hollow screamed with voices that had been collected over millions of years as they felt themselves being pulled back into the space between universes. Suman felt her consciousness stretching and thinning as the collapse reached the flagship, and in her final moments, she saw something that filled her with a strange sense of peace. The other members of the fleet were smiling. They were afraid, and they were in pain, and they knew that they were about to cease existing in any meaningful way. But they were smiling because they knew that their sacrifice meant something. 200 humans became a permanent barrier between the wound and the universe, their consciousness woven into the fabric of the seal that would keep the Hollow trapped forever. And then there was silence. Years later, the Galactic Council erected a monument at the edge of where the Vomark expanse had once existed. It was a simple structure, a spire of white stone that rose toward the stars and carried the names of 200 humans who had given everything to save a galaxy that had once dismissed them as reckless children. Elder Soundho spoke at the dedication ceremony, his ancient voice carrying across the crowd of representatives from 100 different species. "In 3 million years of existence, I have watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations," he said. "I have seen species that were powerful beyond imagination and species that were wise beyond comprehension. But I have never seen a species answer their own mistake with such terrible and beautiful resolve." Ambassador Myray Park stood at the front of the human delegation, her hair now white with age, and her face lined with the weight of everything she had witnessed. "The humans were warned," Sionho continued. "They ignored that warning at a terrible cost. And then they paid a price that no other species has ever been willing to pay. And in doing so, they saved us all." The elder turned to face the monument, and his voice softened with genuine emotion. "We called them young and foolish," he said. "We believed that their arrogance would be their downfall, and in a way, we were right. But we never imagined that the same arrogance would drive them to sacrifice themselves for strangers who had shown them nothing but condescension." Myray stepped forward when the elder finished, and she placed her hand on the cold stone that bore the names of people she had known and loved. "General Taiho Lim," she read aloud. "Commander Suman Cho," and she continued reading until she had spoken every name. And the galaxy listened in respectful silence when she finished. She looked up at the stars that twinkled in the distance, and she spoke the words that would be remembered for as long as any species in the universe still existed. "We ignored the warning," Myray said. "And then we made it right. Somewhere in the sealed womb between dimensions, 200 human souls stood, eternal guard against the darkness that hungered for conscious minds, and the galaxy was safe because of them." The secret research facility hidden beneath the frozen surface of Europa hummed with desperate activity as the brightest minds from a dozen species worked together on what might be the last chance for survival. Dr. Jiwan Kang stood at the center of the chaos, her tired eyes fixed on equations that danced across holographic displays in patterns that would have seemed like madness to anyone without her particular genius. "The fundamental problem is that the hollow exists outside of normal spacetime," she explained to the gathered representatives, her voice hoarse from 3 days without sleep. "They cannot be destroyed because they are not truly here in any conventional sense, and every weapon we create simply passes through them like light through a window." Elder Xiangho sat nearby, his ancient form seeming even more fragile than usual as he watched the human scientist work. "My creators understood this truth before they were consumed," he said quietly. "They spent their final years trying to find a way to seal the wound they had created, but they ran out of time before they could complete their work." Dr. Kang's eyes lit up with sudden intensity. "You have their research?" she asked, moving toward the elder with an urgency that bordered on rudeness. "Fragments only," Xiangho admitted. "Most of their knowledge was lost when the hollow consumed them. But I've preserved what little survived across 3 million years in the hope that someday someone might be able to finish what they started." Ambassador Myray Park entered the research facility with General Taiho Lim at her side, both of them looking like they had aged years in the span of days. "The outer colonies are being evacuated," Myray reported, "but the hollow are moving faster than we anticipated, and we have already lost contact with 17 research stations along the boundary of the expanding darkness." "How long do we have?" Dr. Kang asked without looking up from her work. "At their current rate of expansion, they will reach the core worlds of the Alliance within 2 weeks," Taiho said grimly. "After that, there will be nowhere left to run." Dr. Kang nodded, as if this information was merely another variable in her calculations. "Then we need to move faster," she said. "Elder Xiangho, I need everything you have from the architects. I mean everything, even fragments that you think are too damaged or incomplete to be useful." The elder hesitated for only a moment before reaching into the folds of his robes and withdrawing a small crystal that pulsed within her. "Light. This contains the sum total of knowledge that survived the fall of my creators," Xiangho said. "It has been guarded by my species for 3 million years, passed down through generations as the most sacred of relics, and I have never shared it with any other species until this moment." Dr. Kang took the crystal with trembling hands, her eyes wide with the understanding of what she held. "Why now?" she asked. Xiangho's expression was gentle and sad, and somehow proud all at once. "Because in all of my long existence, I have never encountered a species quite like humanity," he said. "You are reckless and arrogant, and you rush into dangers that wiser species would avoid. And yet there is something in your nature that refuses to accept defeat, even when the odds are impossible." The crystal's information poured into the facility's computer systems, and Dr. Kang gasped as she saw the scope of what the architects had attempted. They were trying to create a controlled dimensional collapse. She breathed, a wound to seal a wound, a scar in reality that would trap the hollow between dimensions and prevent them from ever reaching our universe again. "They failed," Xiangho reminded her. "The energy requirements were beyond even their capabilities, and the device they built destroyed itself before it could be activated." Dr. Kang's eyes scanned the ancient equations with feverish intensity, a brilliant mind racing through possibilities that would have taken ordinary scientists years to comprehend. They failed because they were trying to power the device remotely, she said slowly. They were afraid to get close to the hollow, so they attempted to activate the collapse from a safe distance, and the energy dissipated before it could reach the target. Mireille felt a cold knot forming in her stomach as she began to understand what the scientist was suggesting. You are saying that someone would need to activate the device from inside the veil mark, she said. Dr. Kang nodded, and there was no joy in her expression despite the breakthrough she had achieved. The device needs to be detonated at the heart of the dimensional wound, she confirmed, and the energy required is so massive that it will consume everything within a radius of several light years, including anyone who is carrying the trigger. The room fell silent as the weight of this revelation settled over everyone present. General Taiho was the first to speak. How many people would be needed to deliver the device and ensure its activation? He asked. Dr. Kang ran the numbers in her head. The hollow will resist, she said. They will sense what we are attempting, and they will throw everything they have at stopping us. So we would need a fleet large enough to fight through their defenses, and a crew willing to sacrifice themselves at the moment of victory. I will go, Commander Suman Cho said from the doorway, where she had been standing unnoticed for several minutes. I led the mission that awakened the hollow, and I should be the one to put them back to sleep. General Taiho shook his head firmly. If anyone should carry this burden, it is me, he said. I gave the orders that sent you into the Velmark, and my arrogance is the reason we are facing extinction. You are both being foolish, Myra interjected. We need experienced leaders to organize the evacuation and coordinate the Alliance's remaining defenses, and neither of you can afford to throw your lives away on a suicide mission. But even as she spoke the words, Myra could see the determination in their eyes, and she knew that nothing she said would change their minds. I spent my entire life believing that humanity's destiny was to conquer the stars, Taiho said quietly. But now I understand that true greatness is not about conquest, and it is about sacrifice. And it is about having the courage to fix the mistakes you have made no matter the cost. Suman placed her hand on the general's shoulder. We will need volunteers, she said. People who understand what they are signing up for and are willing to give everything to protect the people they love. Within hours of the announcement, 200 humans had stepped forward. They came from every corner of Earth and every colony in human space. Soldiers and scientists and ordinary people who simply wanted to do something meaningful with their lives. Dr. Kang worked without rest to complete the device, incorporating the architects' technology with human engineering in a fusion that should not have been possible. Elder Xianghe watched the preparations with an expression that Myra could not quite read in 3 million years. I have never seen anything like this, the elder said softly. Species have fought the hollow before, but they fought to survive, to save themselves. And these humans are fighting to save everyone else. Myra stood beside him, watching the volunteers board the ships that would carry them to their deaths. That is who we are, she said. We make terrible mistakes and we cause disasters that should never have happened. But when we realize what we have done, we will do anything to make it right. The fleet launched from Europa's orbital stations, 200 souls flying toward the darkness that waited at the heart of the Veilmark. Expanse. Myra watched until the last ship disappeared into the void, and she did not try to stop the tears that rolled down her cheeks. Somewhere in that fleet, General Taiho and Commander Suman were preparing to give their lives for a galaxy that had every right to hate humanity for what they had done. And somehow, that sacrifice felt like the most human thing imaginable. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Commander Suman Cho finished her testimony, and Ambassador Myrie Park watched. The faces of the assembled representatives. With a heavy heart, some showed anger at humanity's recklessness. Others displayed the cold satisfaction of those who had always believed that the young human species would bring disaster upon the galaxy. But the face of Elder Xiangho showed only grief. The ancient Yoran rose from his seat, his movements slow and weary with the weight of 3 million years, and when he spoke, his voice carried no accusation or condemnation. I have watched this moment unfold 117 times, Xiangho said quietly. 117 species have crossed into the Velmark despite our warnings, and 117 times I have stood in this chamber and explained what will happen next. General Taiho Lim sat in the human delegation section with his head bowed, and for the first time since Myrie had known him, the proud military commander looked broken. Elder Xiangho, on behalf of humanity, I accept full responsibility for this disaster, Taiho said, his voice rough with shame. I was the one who pushed for the mission, and I was the one who dismissed your warnings as the superstitions of an ancient race trying to keep humanity contained. Xiangho turned his dark eyes toward the general, and there was compassion in his expression that Myrie had not expected. Your pride is not unique. General, the elder said, every young species believes they are different, that their courage will succeed where others have failed. And there is something beautiful about that faith, even when it leads to tragedy. A representative from the Morvith species, a tall insectoid being with wings that shimmered like oil on water, rose from their seat with barely contained fury. Beautiful, the Morvith hissed. The humans have doomed us all with their arrogance, and you call their stupidity beautiful. I call their hope beautiful, Xiangho corrected gently. Hope is what drives species to reach for the stars, and it is also what blinds them to the dangers that wait in the darkness. And I cannot condemn them for possessing the very quality that has allowed life to flourish. Across this galaxy, Myrie stood from her seat, drawing the attention of the entire chamber. Elder Xiangho, you said that 117 species have made this mistake before, she said. What happened to them, and more importantly, how did the Hollow return to their slumber after each awakening? The elder's expression grew heavier, and Myrie saw something in his eyes that looked like the memory of unimaginable loss. The Hollow did not return to slumber, Xiangho said. They consumed each species that awakened them, and then they spread outward from the Velmark until they had devoured every mind in the surrounding region. And only then did they grow dormant again. The chamber erupted in panicked voices, and Myrie felt her blood turn to ice. How far did they spread? She asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. The last awakening occurred approximately 5 million years ago, Xiangho replied. They consumed 8,000 inhabited worlds before they finally returned to the Velmark to sleep. The number was incomprehensible, and Myrie saw the same horror reflected on every face in the chamber. 8,000 worlds, countless billions of lives, all because one species had ignored the warnings and ventured where they should not have gone. There must be something we can do, General Taiho said, rising to his feet with desperate determination in his eyes. Every enemy has a weakness, and every threat can be overcome with enough force and ingenuity. Xiangho shook his head slowly. The Hollow are not an enemy in any sense that you understand, General, the elder explained. They are not a species or an army or even a form of life as we comprehend it. And they exist in a way that makes your weapons as useless as throwing stones at the wind. Then, what are they? Myrie asked. Xiangho paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of secrets that had been kept for millions of years. Before my species developed language, our creators ruled this galaxy, he said. They were called the architects, and they were so advanced that they made the combined technology of the current Galactic Council look like the tools of primitive cave dwellers. The elder's eyes grew distant as he recalled history that no living being should have been able to remember. The architects sought to transcend physical existence. Xiangho continued. They built devices that would allow them to upload their consciousness into the fabric of reality itself, becoming one with the universe and achieving a form of immortality that would outlast the stars themselves. What happened? Commander Suman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The experiment failed, Xiangho said simply. Instead of transcending reality, they tore a wound in the universe itself. And through that wound came something that should never have existed. And the architects were the first minds to be consumed by the hollow. The chamber fell into absolute silence as the implications sank in. You are telling us that the hollow are not from this reality, Myray said slowly. They are an absence, Xiangho confirmed. They are what exists in the space between realities. And they hunger for consciousness because consciousness is the one thing they lack. And they will never stop feeding until every thinking mind in this universe has been emptied and absorbed. General Taiho slammed his fist on the table in front of him. I refuse to accept that there is nothing we can do, he declared. Humanity has faced impossible odds before, and we have always found a way to survive. Xiangho looked at the general with an expression that mixed pity with something that might have been respect. Perhaps that is why I still have hope despite witnessing this tragedy so many times, the elder said. Because somewhere in this universe, there must be a species that can do what no one else has ever done. At that moment, an alarm blared through the chamber, and the tactical display at the center of the room flickered to life with a terrifying image. The boundary of the Volmark expanse was expanding. They are moving toward us, a Yoran technician reported, their voice trembling with fear. At their current speed, they will reach the outer colonies of the Alliance within 3 standard cycles. Myray stared at the display, watching the darkness spread across the map like a disease consuming healthy tissue. And she realized with horrible clarity what had happened. The navigation data from the derelict vessel. The data that Commander Suman's fleet had scanned before their retreat contained detailed maps of every inhabited system in the galaxy. Humanity had not just awakened the hollow. They had handed them a roadmap to everything. They hungered for the weight of that knowledge pressed down on Moray's shoulders, and for a moment, she felt the despair that must have consumed every species that had made this mistake before. But then she looked at General Taiho, at Commander Suman, at the representatives of 100 different species who were all facing extinction because of human arrogance. And she felt something else rising in her chest. Humanity had created this disaster, and humanity would find a way to fix it. Or they would die trying. She met Xiangho's ancient eyes across the chamber, and she saw that the elder understood exactly what she was thinking. Ambassador Park, Xiangho said quietly. In 3 million years, I have never seen a species accept responsibility for their mistakes in the way you are preparing to do. And I confess that for the first time in ages, I feel something that I had thought lost forever. What is that? Elder, Myray asked. Xiangho's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. Hope, he said. Real hope. Commander Suman Cho gripped the armrests of her captain's chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. As her ship drifted through a graveyard of worlds, the Velmark expanse was not empty as the long-range scans had suggested. It was full of death. Hundreds of planets orbited dying stars in slow decaying spirals, and every single one of them had been stripped of life so completely that not even bacteria remained in the soil. And the cities that still stood on their surfaces were filled with the dust of civilizations that had been ancient before Earth had even formed. Commander, I am detecting structures on the 4th planet of this system, Lieutenant Junho reported from his station. His voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might attract unwanted attention. They matched the architectural style of the derelict vessel we came here to investigate. Suman nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the view screen, where the pale blue light of a dying sun illuminated the bones of a world. "Take us in for a closer look," she ordered, "and maintain full sensor coverage of our surroundings at all times." The 3 ships of the Horizon Fleet moved in formation through the debris field of ancient satellites and space stations that surrounded the dead planet, and with every passing moment, Suman felt the weight of the Yuan's warning pressing down on her shoulders. They had been right. Whatever had happened here was beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. And she was beginning to understand why a species that had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations would be afraid of this place. "Commander, we are picking up a distress beacon from the derelict vessel," Lieutenant Yuna called out from the communications station. "It appears to be automated and has been broadcasting for approximately 200,000 years. Suman's blood ran cold at the number 200,000 years was longer than modern humans had existed on Earth. And this ship had been drifting at the edge of the Veilmark for all of that time, waiting for someone foolish enough to answer its call. "Decode the message," Suman ordered, her voice steady despite the fear that was crawling up her spine. The bridge fell silent as the ancient transmission was filtered through the translation software. And when the words finally appeared on the screen, Suman felt her heart stop. "We are fleeing," the message read. "We found something that should not exist. And we woke it from its slumber, and now it is coming for all of us. And there is no weapon that can stop it, and there is no distance that can save you. And if you are reading this message, then you must turn back immediately because it has already noticed you." The message repeated on a loop, and Suman was about to order a full retreat when the lights on the bridge flickered and died. For a moment, there was only darkness. Then the emergency lights came on, bathing everything in a dim red glow that made the bridge look like the inside of a wound. "Report," Suman demanded, rising from her chair. "We have lost contact with the Dauntless," Lieutenant Junho said, his voice shaking. "One moment they were right beside us, and the next their signal simply vanished from our sensors." Suman turned to the view screen, where the 3rd ship of their fleet hung motionless in space, all of its running lights dark and its engines silent. "Hail them," she ordered. There was no response. "Commander, I am detecting life signs aboard the Dauntless," Yuna reported, her face pale in the red emergency lighting. "All 300 crew members appear to be alive and moving normally." Suman frowned at this information. If the crew was alive and mobile, why were they not responding to communications? And why had their ship gone dark without any warning or distress signal? "Prepare a boarding team," Suman said. "I want eyes on that ship and a status report within the hour." The shuttle launched from the Valor's hangar bay, carrying 20 of Suman's best soldiers, and she watched its progress on the tactical display with growing unease. Something was very wrong. The shuttle docked with the Dauntless without incident, and for several minutes, there was nothing but silence on the communication channel. Then Sergeant Minho's voice came through, and Suman had never heard such terror in a soldier's words. "Commander, the crew is here," Minho said, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "They are walking through the corridors and sitting at their stations and going about their duties as if nothing is wrong." "Then what is the problem?" "Sergeant," Suman asked. There was a long pause before Minho answered. "Their eyes are empty." "Commander," he whispered, "they are moving and breathing and even speaking when you talk to them. But there is nothing behind their eyes, and when you look at them, you can feel that whatever made them who they were is simply gone." The blood drained from Suman's face as she realized what had happened. The crew of the Dauntless had not been killed. They had been emptied. "Sergeant, get your team back to the shuttle immediately," Suman ordered. We are leaving this place right now. But before Minho could respond, a new voice came through the communication channel. It was a chorus of voices, hundreds of them speaking in perfect unison. And they used the mouths of the crew of the Dauntless to deliver their message. "We are the Hollow," the voices said. "We have consumed the minds of thousands of species across millions of years. And we have found you to be most interesting." Suman's hands trembled as she listened to the voice that should not exist. "Every species fights when we come for them," the Hollow continued through their stolen mouths. "Every species believes that their weapons or their technology or their courage will save them. And every species learns too late that we cannot be stopped by anything that exists in your reality. What do you want?" Suman demanded, forcing her voice to remain steady. "We offer you a choice," the Hollow said. And there was something almost gentle in their horrible chorus. "Submit to consumption willingly, and the process will be painless. And your minds will join the billions of others that now exist as part of our eternal awareness." Suman's jaw tightened with defiance. "And if we refuse?" she asked. The voices on the other end of the communication paused. And when they spoke again, there was hunger beneath their words that made Suman's soul recoil. "Then we will take your world as we have taken so many others. And we will empty every mind on your planet one by one. And your species will become nothing more than hollow vessels walking through cities they no longer understand." Suman did not hesitate. "All ships. Emergency retreat," she commanded. "Maximum speed. Get us out of the Veilmark now." The Valor and the Phoenix turned as one and raced toward the boundary of the Forbidden region, leaving the Dauntless and its empty crew behind. But even as they fled, Suman could feel the attention of the Hollow following them, patient and eternal, and absolutely certain that there was nowhere in the universe where humanity could hide. She recorded a message for Earth as the ships crossed back into safe space. And her words were simple and devastating. "The Yoran were right," she said. "We should have listened. And now the galaxy will pay the price for our arrogance." The stars that had once seemed full of promise now looked like the lights of a prison. And Suman knew that she had brought something terrible into the universe that would not rest until it had consumed every thinking mind in existence. Ambassador Myray Park stood before the massive holographic display in the United Earth Diplomatic Corps headquarters on Luna, watching the ancient face of the Yoran Elder fill the screen with an expression she had never seen before on any alien species. It was fear. The Yoran were the oldest species in the known galaxy, having watched civilizations rise and crumble to dust over the course of 3 million years. And in all of Murray's dealings with them, they had never shown anything but calm detachment and quiet wisdom. Until now, you must hear our words carefully. "Ambassador Park," the Elder said, his voice carrying the weight of ages. "The Veilmark expanse has awakened, and your exploratory vessels have been detected moving toward its boundary." Myray frowned and pulled up the tactical display on her secondary screen, seeing the 3 ships of the Horizon Fleet positioned at the edge of a region of space that the Galactic Council had marked as forbidden territory for as long as humanity had been part of the interstellar community. Elder Xiangho, "Our ships are investigating a derelict vessel that was discovered drifting near the boundary," Myray explained, keeping her voice diplomatic and measured. "The technology aboard appears to be centuries beyond anything we have encountered, and the scientific value alone justifies a closer examination." The Elder's eyes, ancient and deep as black holes, seemed to bore through the screen and into her soul. "You do not understand what sleeps within the Veilmark," Xiangho said, and his voice trembled in a way that made Murray's blood run cold. 3 million years ago, before my species had even developed language, our creators were the masters of this galaxy, and they were beautiful and powerful beyond your comprehension." He paused, And Mireille could see memories of unimaginable loss flickering behind those dark eyes. The veil mark consumed them. Xiangho continued. Every mind, every consciousness, every spark of awareness they possessed was devoured by something that should never have been allowed to exist. And we have spent 3 million years making certain that nothing disturbs its slumber. With respect, Elder, humanity cannot make decisions based on ancient legends and superstitions, Mireille said carefully. We need concrete evidence of any threat before we can justify abandoning such a significant discovery. Xiangho's expression shifted from fear to something that looked almost like grief. Every young species says these words, he said softly. Every young species believes they are different, that their courage and ingenuity will protect them where others have failed. And every young species learns the truth too late. The transmission ended, leaving Mireille staring at a blank screen with a knot of unease growing in her stomach. She immediately contacted General Taiho Lim at Earth Defense Command, relaying the Yoran's warning in full detail. But she could tell from his expression that he had already made up his mind. Ambassador, we have spent 50 years under the Council's thumb, Taiho said, his jaw set with determination. They have restricted our expansion, limited our access to advanced technology, and treated us like children who cannot be trusted with sharp objects. General, the Yoran are not our enemies, Mireille protested. They have never acted against humanity's interests. And if something frightens them this badly after 3 million years of existence, perhaps we should consider that their fear is justified. Taiho shook his head firmly. Or perhaps they are simply trying to keep us contained in our little corner of the galaxy while they hoard the secrets of the universe for themselves. He countered. That derelict vessel contains technology that could advance human civilization by centuries. And I will not let superstitious warnings from ancient aliens prevent us from claiming our rightful place among the stars. Mireille opened her mouth to argue further, but she knew it was pointless. The Horizon Fleet had already received its orders, and Commander Suman Cho had confirmed that her 3 ships were prepared to enter the Valmark expanse within the hour. She made one last attempt, contacting Suman directly and begging her to wait for a full council review of the Yoran's warning. But the commander's response was polite and firm. Ambassador Park, I appreciate your concern, but I have my orders, Suman said, her face calm and confident on the display. We are the finest crew in the Earth Fleet, and we have faced challenges that the galaxy said were impossible, and we have overcome every single one of them. Commander, the Yoran have never steered us wrong, Mireille said desperately. Please, just give me time to gather more information about what might be waiting for you in there. Suman smiled, and there was genuine warmth in her expression. Despite the tension of the moment, the universe rewards the bold. Ambassador, she said, humanity did not reach the stars by hiding from shadows and listening to scary stories. And we will not abandon our future because an ancient species is afraid of the dark. The transmission ended, and Mireille slumped back in her chair, feeling helpless and terrified in a way she had never experienced in her long diplomatic career. 3 hours later, she watched the tactical display as the Horizon Fleet crossed the boundary into the Veilmark expanse. The ships were the pride of Earth's exploration program, carrying 900 of humanity's best and brightest. And they moved with confidence into the darkness that the Galactic Council had warned against for millennia. For the first few minutes, everything seemed normal. Commander Suman's voice came through clearly, reporting that initial scans showed nothing unusual about the region. And Mireille allowed herself to hope that perhaps the Yoran's fears were unfounded after all. Then the communications began to stutter. Earth Command, we are detecting some kind of interference with our transmission arrays, Suman reported, her voice breaking up with static. Attempting to compensate and boost signal strength, The static grew worse, and Mireille leaned forward, straining to hear every word. "There is something out here." Sumin's voice came through in fragments. "Something massive, and it is not showing up on any of our sensors. But we can feel it." The display flickered, and for just a moment, Mireille saw something in the background of Sumin's transmission. It was darkness, but not the ordinary darkness of space. This darkness had depth and hunger and awareness, and it was looking directly at the camera with an attention that made Mireille want to scream, "Ambassador Park." Sumin's voice came through one final time, clear as crystal, despite the static that should have made it impossible. "Tell the Elder he was right, and tell humanity that we are sorry." The transmission cut to silence, and the tactical display showed all 3 ships of the Horizon Fleet going dark simultaneously. Mireille sat in the sudden quiet of the diplomatic headquarters, staring at the screen where the icons representing 900 human lives had simply stopped transmitting in the distance. She could hear alarms beginning to sound as Earth Defense Command realized what had happened, and she knew that very soon, General Taiho and the rest of humanity would learn that the Yoren's warning had not been superstition at all. Deep within the Weilmark expanse, something ancient and terrible had opened its eyes for the first time in 3 million years. And it had found exactly what it was looking for, a path to the rest of the galaxy. And humanity had handed it to them on a silver platter.